Hey guys, welcome back to the wrong end of the snake. Sean Clair has graciously agreed to spend another 30 minutes with us or so. Boy, we got into a bunch of stuff in that hour, and it was really great. And thanks for coming, Sean. We had a few questions from people that were watching, and also Tater, you said you wanted to maybe talk about the training program that exists there at Clair. Why don't you throw a couple of questions at him?
Yeah, I just wanted to get into the whole philosophy you have on training your Claire employees, what Dave Lester brings to the table there in that, because he heads that up for you, and what just basically what's the philosophy of somebody maybe that's gonna get a chance to go work for Claire, an intern there. What's going to happen, and what training methods do you do,
And
and the
what's that
processes
path?
that go
What
on?
if
Yeah.
someone gets
Yeah,
hired? Where does that start, and where does it go?
sure. So let's talk about the hired piece and then we'll bounce around, I
Okay.
think.
Perfect.
So um, we hire slow. So don't get frustrated. And I've told people this, like some people are like, man, I've talked to this person and this person and this person and this person, and it hasn't lined up. And it doesn't mean that it's not going to. It's just we are um, really sensitive about it. And here's the reason. You asked about some of the um, fundamentals maybe. When we look at somebody joining our company, we're not looking at, okay, how do we take care of this tour, or how do we take care of this year? It's we're going to be working with this person for the rest of our lives and the rest of their lives. We want this to be a place where somebody comes to realize their life's work. So to that extent, Toby's often teased. He goes, you're the hardest company in the world to get fired from. You should maybe think about that. But it is, we always try to find the best in everybody. But that fundamental is important, because one of the things I worry about is the disposable nature of the gig economy. Sometimes that is there are things, there are freedoms associated with that, which are amazing. And if that is the direction your life takes you, go that way. But there are also things like when you come here, you're benefited. There's 401k, there's health benefits. And I mean, thank God there are. I mean, in the midst of a global pandemic, we have people that at least they don't have to worry about their health care. That's right. All in place. It's taken care of. And that's important. We want people within our organization to have that base. And stepping back from this a second, and then I guess weaving it back in, you talk about training, Tater. That actually came to us. We really stepped it up a notch when Shoko joined. So Clair Brothers, it was very much baptism by fire. And I think that was everybody, right?
Yeah.
But Shoko, they were really intentional with
Yes.
their training. So when they came, so again, we talk about companies coming together and being able to take the best of both. Clair Brothers had benefited, health benefit, 401k employees, and Shoko didn't have that at the time. But what they did have was this training program where they invested in people. We were able to put those two things together. And then Dave Lester took training and brought it to a whole new level. I mean, everybody that at the time, it started foundationally as skill set based training, a technical skill set. And I don't have to tell you guys, there's just a ton of people in this industry with incredibly high IQs. So they gravitate this way. Teach me the skills. Like, I'll solve problems. I like problem solving. But actually, the emotional intelligence side of the equation is more important. When you look at, you have to get along, you have to be able to put yourself, in somebody else's shoes. You have to be inclusive. There are all these things that really stack up to, at the end of the day, when pulling off a gig, those things stack up and are huge. And that's what Dave, in the last few years, he has really turned the dial on that. So it used to be, 75% technical skills, 25% of the emotional intelligence. If he's not 50-50 now, he might be 60-40 in the direction of the emotional intelligence piece, leadership mindset, mindfulness, having the ability to have empathy, to understand where others are, in their day at that time. And those pieces are huge, not just for, seamlessly providing the service that we provide, but also having those skills. And he teaches to this, to build up a mental framework to sustain in this industry long term, because it is hard. We kind of talked about that, I think, actually offline, where it was like, we kind of breezed over the fact that what we do is actually incredibly mentally and physically difficult, like relative to other industry. It is, it's incredibly challenging. And he creates that skill set that helps them not just, through that, but also, sustain long term. So I don't know, Tater, if I spoke to the things you were.
No, I think that's great because, I started at Shoko in the mid to late 80s, and the training program wasn't there yet. And they had started to do that about 3 years in when I was there. And you talk to the mental capabilities. We'd get these super smart guys, and they train them, and they get on the road for 3 days. And next thing you know, us guys that had been on the road all year get a break, and your break's cut because one of those guys walked off a tour and you're flying out because they didn't teach them the mental part of it and what it took to get to be they weren't going to mix. You're out there pulling 4-aught. You know what I mean?
So that was the late 80s. Cause I actually, Leon and I have not had the time to chronologically, I mean, he's filled me in on philosophy and everything they put together there, but that was late 80s. So to put that in perspective, when Shoko joined Clair Brothers, it was 97. Yeah, it was 10 years later. You guys had a 10-year running start. That's amazing.
Well, I'm not saying it worked well at the beginning. I'm just saying they had to start. Well, it took a few years to tweak it.
And it certainly was skill set minded, not about what you're talking
mental.
about.
So hearing that Dave's focusing on that's great, because you hate to get this guy super smart and then can't sleep on a bus, and then there you go.
I think that is the hardest thing to figure out. I always tell people the secret to my success is that I can walk into a room full of crazy people and identify what their needs are, right?
Yeah.
Like I can say, Justin Bieber, boy, he's crazy, but I understand what he wants, and so, figuring out who is good at that, must be super difficult,
and stress does funny things to people. There are some people that have very unpredictable results to that stress. And that is,
look at me right now. I'm like living at home like a hermit. Like I don't even want to go outside. It's scary out there. I don't want to go outside. I'm like agoraphobic right now. Yeah. Stress is hard.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. But, cool. Tater, you got anything else you wanted to talk about?
We got so many questions from people asking all kinds of questions about PA systems, all that kind of stuff. We don't really get technical here that much. So, people asking about Adams and PAs at Clair now and Brit Row and this and that. Well, we're going to kind of, all that stuff's there. Clair has all those products now, and I'm sure whoever wants them is going to get them, right? In the end of the day. So, how do you, it says from Vitali, how do you cope with the rapidly change in new technology to keep up to date? And I think that's a great question, because we've just come from the Dave Lester training thing. When you've got 300 Digico consoles, what is the procedures of getting those all online and updated?
It's funny.
And all the other gear.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this question is poignant, because actually just yesterday I'm sitting with Ted Leamy, and he says, and I love this. Every time somebody new joins the team, we get the fresh perspective.
Yeah.
And one of the things we work really hard to do is to create a culture where you feel comfortable sharing, whether it's good news or bad news, just sharing. Like, you are not your ideas, put them on the table. And he said something that was really impactful, and I appreciated. He said, you guys could write a book on creating an environment for people to feel comfortable in a rapidly changing space. And that is, again, speaking to the COVID piece, and stress and how people reacted, I think we were truly blessed that although there were elements where, major adversity, major stress, major adversity. And I think because we have that openness and candor and very clear communication style, that we're able to persevere and deal with that rapid change. So Tater, I wish I could say that it is, systematic and organized in such a way that I could give you the textbook for it. But in fact, what it is it's hard coded into the culture. We have, aspirational, hardworking people that make this their life's work. And so they're constantly up and reading on all of these things.
Right.
And then we were feeding all these challenges in through the door, and we create an environment where people are able to succeed in solving all of these problems, and that's ultimately how we get there.
Okay, let me step back then just a little bit, then going back to the mental health thing. I know you live and breathe Clair Brothers probably 24 hours a day, and for you, you're the guy, you need 40 hours a day to even get a minimum of your stuff done. How do you divide that up with family time? How do you get the family time in and the work time? Because like your sister's statement, living to work, working to live, whole vibe, you chose the other way she didn't want to go. So, how do you in your time frame, how do you divvy that up and give the quality time to your family? Because I know you've got Clair Global on your brain constantly.
Yeah. So, work-life balance is real. It's something that you should think about and you should set intention. But the other thing that maybe isn't readily obvious is everybody's work-life balance is different, and the way that they deal with it is going to be different. So for me, I am being introspective on a regular basis and checking in with how I'm doing. But the other piece of, so there are times where I'm like, hey, I'm manic. Like I'll recognize it, and I'll take a moment, I'll take the phone, I'll put it to the side. My daughters and I will go out for a walk in the woods. That is rehab 101 for that moment. And it works. It's amazing. They talk to me, they ask questions. It's, therapeutic beyond belief. But then there are other times where I weave it into my life. I mean, family and business coincide. So I'm there with my father and people, you asked a question earlier, Pooch, and I guess I could have answered it this way about the time with my father, or maybe it was you, Tater. But if you actually step back and look at hours spent with my father, I mean, I spend more time with my father than probably 95% of people out there with father-son relationships. I mean, I'm truly lucky to be shoulder and shoulder with him day in, day out. So that's another way we weave it in. I mean, because our families feel part of this business from the very beginning, it helps us with that balance. That's me, and it's different for everybody, but that is how I make it work.
And you're constantly thinking about it and managing it, right? It's not a side project. It's at your forefront of what you're doing.
And talking about it. I mean, last night, dinner at the Clair household, Steve Maples from Rocket Cargo is there. And yeah, we're talking about all sorts of different things, but we're also talking about the business. And it's not like, okay, the girls are gone, now let's talk about it. We're talking about it. They're there with Steve Maples, who is a, 40-year veteran, Ego Trips before Rocket Cargo Trucking's division. I mean, they're there and they're asking him questions like they ask me questions because it's just normal to them. He's another guy that's there, and that's how it is.
That's awesome.
Hilarious. That's
Do
great.
you have is there something at Clair that you have a real interest in? Like, you like something that really gets your goat? Are you into the Wi-Fi thing? Are you into speaker design? Are you into, outside of being the VP of sales, is there something that you go down on the floor and I'm like, man, I want to learn all about what?
Sure. So one thing to know about me, and I think a lot of people in this industry, so I'm curious how you react to this, but I am without a doubt ADD. So there isn't one thing, Pooch. Like I literally, am bouncing off of everything that's happening. I mean, to give you just a snippet into it, we talked about the virtual live audience thing. I'm on the phone with, Audinate this morning talking about virtual machines and how they're ephemeral in nature and how do we, Dante virtual sound card and, all of these things in the morning. So even though I'm VP of sales, I'm in and out of everything. And I love it. I love it all. I mean, at Penn State, I got a degree in engineering, and part of that was so I could take graduate acoustics classes as an undergrad. And so I love speaker design. I love, sitting with the guys and hearing about what they're planning to unleash in the next 5-10 years. I mean, it gets me going. So my point is it could be a conversation about a virtual machine, or it can be a conversation about, box volume and transducer material selection. And I love it all.
Well, what I've noticed, and the reason that I'm kind of drawn to you as a friend is because you care about sound.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that any of the other Clairs don't. I know your dad cares about sound, but he seems to be focused on the business side of what's happening mostly. He comes to shows and he's like, "Oh yeah, that sounded great," but you're the guy that comes there and walks around for the whole show. And then I don't know Matt very well, but I want to get to know him better.
Sure.
I feel like he's a hard guy to get to know. Is that true?
Yeah. No, he absolutely is.
Yeah.
But with that said, people that know him, I mean, he's my best friend in all the world. So awesome. It's funny how we are different people.
Yeah.
without a doubt. But there isn't anybody who works harder, cares more about this business. And when we talk about, let's step back, because I was talking about VLA. If you actually, time slice it, I'm out there replicating Brownie in motion in like absolute, I don't want to say panic, but like when you were VP of sales and your sales dropped 95%, that's a real moment. That's an oh shit moment.
A moment.
Like, yes. Whoa, I better do something. And my brother is the type of guy that like very quietly, with the group of people at Clair Data Services starts talking through, okay, well, what could actually help us during this void? And then they set out and do it. And there's no bureaucracy or approvals or budget. I mean, it's like, hey, let's do it. And they do it. And then frankly, few weeks down maybe not a few weeks, because he was talking about it, but it took me a moment to like get hit over the head and like, wait a second, this is what we're doing? Like, this is amazing. And then I get pulled into the madness. But yeah, he's that kind of guy.
That's awesome.
You do have to work to get to know him.
I just think it's cool that you all have different interests, but for the same cause.
Mm-hmm. Great, yeah.
So yeah, that's awesome.
This wasn't asked, but while we're talking about that and stuff that Matt does, excuse me, where do you see Clair Global in 10 years, and where would you like to see it in 10 years?
Sure. So let's elevate one step higher, and then we'll jump into Clair Global. The Rocklitteds community is something that is very important, and I think a lot of people get lost in, it's a rehearsal studio, but it's not just a rehearsal studio. It's a concept that says, hey, what if we co-locate all of these companies and build it like a village, separately owned, separately operated, but just like you can go to your neighbor and borrow a cup of sugar, that's the kind of culture that we facilitate. And that village, even more so now that we're traversing through COVID, I'm realizing has such tangible benefit, because there are people and there are companies that are out there that are feeling very lonely right now and challenged, because they feel like the world is on their shoulders and they're all on their own to solve it. Whereas here, we're all talking regularly, sharing our experiences, our challenges, our fears, very openly. And I believe that kind of community, that's something I'm excited about, because I think it's a gateway to some of the other pieces we talked about, sustainably bringing people into this industry and helping them, retire with purpose. So that piece is exciting. And then what's amazing is when you shoot for something that it's aspirational at that level, Clair Global becomes a cog in that wheel. And that piece is exciting for me, that we are a piece of that community. And what we're going to do is continue to find aspirational people and, go the direction they lead us. Like we are very much, driven by the people we're side by side with. It wasn't some, strategy session at the executive team that created VLA. Like it was ragtag engineering deck A, set of computers and, off to the races. So it's that's the piece. I can't tell you where we're going to go because it'll be driven by the people that are here.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, listen, Shaun, thank you so much for spending some time with us. And man, I learned a lot, and hopefully we were able to share with some other people that you haven't talked to before, some people that got to see what's going on at Clair and hopefully got some good news from it. I know that I did. I know that you guys are continuing to work forward, and when we all go back to work, it's going to be amazing. So
yeah, thank you guys for having me.
I know your enthusiasm always just talking to you rubs off on me and gives me, keeps the fire burning too. And I love that. I love seeing your face to know that this is great, man. We're all this is fantastic.
We're going to be okay.
And that's not just during COVID, that's during busy times. So, that's fantastic. So I really thank you for that.
Yeah. Thank you guys for the time.
We'll say hi to your dad for us.
Yes,
and
we'll do.
we will,
everybody.
We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Talk to you guys soon. Thank you.
Bye.